Since the last video, I did a little updating to the character rig. Blender has a feature where you can pose your character like this. Say I move the arm like this, and I say I want this arm to be exactly the same way. All I would have to do is select all the bones in this arm, and then go to Pose, Copy Pose, Pose, Paste, X Flipped Pose. And only when I pasted the right side of the pose, it was off a little bit. So what it turned out to be was, if you hit tab to go into edit mode, I had to first hit A and select all my bones, and under the bone roll I had to recalculate the roll to the y-axis. So this basically just makes the rotation of all these joints uniform so that when you are doing copying and pasting poses, the left and right side will correlate correctly. And of course, that's the second big reason why we really wanted to set up the .L.R convention that we did when we first created the rig. So I had to fix that. And then the other thing I had to do, strangely, I was having some weird results with the feet, and I think it had to do with the copy rotation constraints I put on these bones right here, which were necessary for my whole foot rig. So I had to select both of these bones and change their bone roll to z-axis for some reason. Now, exactly why that is, I'm not entirely sure, but it's important to know if you're having trouble with copying and pasting poses, then you may need to adjust the bone roll here. Finally, under the bone constraints of these two bones here, I had to invert the y-axis as well, but after I did that, everything was working pretty good. One other quick thing I did was, under the IK constraint of this head bone here, I increased the chain length from just 2. What it was just controlling the head and the neck. I went ahead and sent that down to 3 to have a little bit more fluidity of my head there. That's all updated in the current example file. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and tap A to select all my bones and hit Alt-R to reset them. Okay, so the first thing we need to understand, Blender does not consider the whole armature as a single object when animating. If I were to go ahead and hit F to insert a keyframe, and of course F inserts a keyframe and then moves the timeline down a second, or I could have just hit I to insert a keyframe without moving the timeline. But if I insert a keyframe, and then I say I hit G to grab this arm up, and I hit F again to insert another one, and then I zoom back, we'll see that it does successfully animate that arm right there. However, say I select all these keyframes and delete them, and then I hit F to insert another keyframe, but then I grab this head and I grab it and I move it like that, and I hit F to insert another keyframe, we'll see nothing is happening here. And that's because it considers keyframes for each single bone. Now there's two ways around this. The first way, hit A to select all the bones, and then X to delete these keyframes, Alt-R to reset. The first way is to first move the character around however you want, get the whole body in whatever position you want it to be. And instead of just hitting F, hit A first to select all the bones involved, and then hit F or I to insert a keyframe. And what that does is insert a keyframe for every single bone. So now when we grab this and then say move this and move that also and move that like that, rotate it, and then we hit A to select everything again and hit F to insert another keyframe, it will record the animation for the character as a whole. So that's a little cumbersome. The most simple way to animate while you're animating a character is to change this option here from low growth scale to scroll down and select whole character. And now if I hit Alt-R to reset its position and I hit X to delete these keyframes, now I can pose my character however I wish here, doing who knows what, and get started out like something like this, and move that back some. Then I'll just hit F and then grab this in some other crazy way and grab that down and grab this like that, and then hit F again, and we'll see that it records the entire pose in the way that we might expect it to. Okay, so once again, I'm going to hit A to select all my bones, and then hit Alt-R to reset position, and then X down here with the keyframes highlighted to delete all of the keyframes. Okay, so let's hit 3 to go into right view, and I'm going to hit G to grab this leg here and raise it up, and then I'm just going to grab this toe and bend it a little bit, and I'm going to grab this, move it back, rotate it down, grab that also, something like this, and then I'm going to hit 1 to go in front view, hit G to grab this arm down, and hit G to grab this up, move that in some, move that over, 5 to go into top view, and just rotate this around directly, and rotate that down directly, rotate that, and let's just go ahead and hit 4 to go into left view, G to grab this arm, G to grab it, rotate that back a bit, and rotate that, something like that, and grab that. Basically, you want to set up really stylized, cool looking poses in between your animations. We would hit F there to insert our keyframe and move our timeline along. And then basically what you want is this pose flipped exactly. So you can just hit A and go to pose, copy pose, pose, and then paste X flipped pose, and that's going to do everything exactly on the other side. And this is working like this because we set up properly the .L and .R syntax earlier when we first made the rig. And then you would just hit F, select this first keyframe here, hit D to duplicate it, and bring it over here, and then we'll see we've got the beginnings of a walk cycle. First thing we might notice here is that the arms are moving not the way we would expect. So actually what we're going to want to do is we want to flip the positions of these arms. So we can use the copy and paste inverted pose thing here also, but just on the hands. Hold down C, bring up my circle select, select this arm pose here. I'd go ahead and hit C to select this also, and then I would go to pose, copy pose, and pose, paste X flip pose, and I've just successfully switched these arms around. Then I could go ahead and hit F to reestablish that keyframe. So instead of going through the pose menu again, we can just, still having those selected, press Control C, and then Control Shift V, paste the inverted pose like that. Then we can hit F again. Then we can just delete, hit X to delete this keyframe, hit D to duplicate that one and bring it back there. And okay, so now the arms are swaying back as the legs go forward, and that looks a little more natural. And then so you could basically pretty much from there start working on your walk cycle, get it however you want it. So one quick thing to note is that even though we are able to pose our character however we want and then hit F or I to insert a keyframe for it, if we want to copy and paste these keyframes and say I want exactly this pose here put over where the 3 is because I want it to basically do the same thing that's happening here. When we're working with the keyframes, still have to come in here and hit A to select all the bones. It will select all the keyframes for each of these bones, and then we'll hit D to duplicate that and set that over there. So we only have to hit A to select all the bones to copy the pose when we're working with the specific keyframes, but while we're animating it up in the 3D view, shouldn't be a problem. So for instance, I might want to put a little sway here by grabbing this bone and just putting a little kind of style and movement into it. And then I would go ahead and hit F for that. And now we see we have a little more interesting sway in there. And then I would want to hit A to select all those bones, Control C to copy the entire pose, and then once again go back here and hit Control Shift V to pose the mirrored version of that so that we get that back and forth like that. And then I might begin to move the head a little bit, just give it a little even more character there, and hit F for that. So slowly we start getting where we want to.